Hey, we got a request yesterday from one of our seventh sisters about how to use rubrics. And so first, before I start, I want to say hi to everybody and thanks for asking the question. We love to get questions at Seven Sisters Homeschool, and we're a community all together. So we want to work together to homeschool our kids, especially the high school years, because it can be so complicated. So, and you know what? There's six of us, seven sisters. There's Vicky, that's me, and then Sabrina and Kim and Marilyn and Allison and Sarah. So who's the seventh sister? You are. So thanks for being our seventh sisters. So rubrics can be kind of confusing if you've never used one, and that's okay. So we found that rubrics are very, very helpful in helping clarify how we're grading, and also so teens can understand how they will be graded. So you do not need to use a rubric. If you don't like rubrics, if it feels confining, don't do it, But if you want really clear messaging on how you're grading, that is really a simple way to make the grading happen. So this is how you do it. All right, so in Seven Sisters writing guides, like our essay guides, our research paper writing guides, all of those have a rubric included in the guide. And what you do is, first, you download a copy of that rubric for your teen. And then as they start their assignment on writing an essay or a research paper, especially those that, because they're so concrete and they have rules to follow, you sit down with your teen and discuss the rubric. Okay, so the rubric's going to be looking at this and this and this and this. So as you do your paper, you can know that you're going to have those to guide yourself. So you tell the teen first, when you do your writing, write just a rough draft. Don't worry about spelling and punctuation and grammar and all of those details. You can go back and get that in the final rough draft. But get your information on the paper so you're not bogged down in the weeds of, do I have everything spelled right? All right. But as soon as that rough draft is basically done, then you get the rubric out and say, okay, is all my spelling okay? So run it through, the Grammarly or one of the paper, it shows you mistakes. And, so does my grammar look right? All the tenses are the same in a sentence. Is there a period at all the ends of all the sentences? So you want to make sure that the spelling and the grammar rules are followed. And so teens, sometimes they forget that. We moms forget that, especially in our world where, you're sending, text messages and, everything's written in shorthand and nobody punctuates anything. So when you do real formal writing, they have to get back out those rules that we don't use as much anymore. So that, the rubric will tell them, check this, check that, check, make sure that there are paragraphs and, in proper paragraph form. All right. And then it helps the teen to look back over their paper and make sure they had a clear thing about what their paper was about. So what's the thesis of the essay? Is that stated right there at the beginning of the paper? And then do I develop that idea through the paper? And that teaches teens so much about critical thinking, examining their own thought processes and explanations. It's so good for their empowerment in their thinking processes. So the rubric will tell them, does the paper develop the theme or the ideas, the thesis of the paper? And then it'll check and say, is everything cited properly? Especially in the research papers, they've got to use, if it's an MLA paper, they need MLA kind of citations. If it's an APA paper, they use APA type citations. If it's a Chicago style paper, they use Chicago style citations. And their writing guides, Seven Sister writing guides and most other companies will tell them exactly how to do that. And you know what? There's apps for that too, so as they go through, the paper, if they use the app, it will help develop those citations right there on the spot for them. So it's getting done well. And if it's there, they may as well use it as long as they know which ones to use. And then according to the kind of paper that they're writing, you want to make sure, on the rubric, were they honest about where they got the information? So they weren't cut and pasting, something off of a website because that would be plagiarism. So the rubric's going to show all that to the teen, like help them make their own checklist. And then they go back through the rough draft with their own personal rubric and kind of grade themselves on it. Did I do this? Did I do that? Okay, if I didn't, then I need to fix it before I get my final draft finished. So then they use that rubric to get the final draft, and then they hand it to the mom. So mom, you get that. Their rough draft, their final draft, and the rubric that they have given themselves, so you know where their head is at. And then, Mom, you make your own rubric. You download the one that we've included in the guide, and you make your checklist. So, did they follow the rules? So here's a simple thing. On our website, if kids are just writing a report or a paper that they don't need, a whole writing guide about for like a social studies or science project, they just got to churn out a paper. There's a rubric for free right on the post that you can adapt to how you want. So it looks like this. So they get points added up to 100 points for things that they did right in the paper. So like, let's see, introduction paragraph, they get 10 points. A body of the paper with paragraphs that support, everyone supports the topic, and then a conclusion. So there's 50 points for the body and then 10 for the conclusion. So that's 70 points altogether. And then they get another 10 points that if their information is logical and readable, it's just not like random free association stuff. Like you can read it and understand what they're writing. They get 10 whole points. And then if they show a basic understanding of the topic, they get another 10 points. If they didn't do quite as well, they get less points, but total, they get about 100 points. And then they get deductions. If there were spelling errors, punctuation errors, grammar errors, contractions, because we always tell the kids, don't put contractions in an essay or a research paper. Like that's informal writing. So don't say can't, say cannot. And it sounds stuffy, but this is just a self-discipline tool. So they get little 1-point deductions for that, which, is irritating to the kids, but it's teaching them a skill that they need in college. So anyway, so you use that rubric that you both have used that same rubric, and then they see how you saw their paper. And so if you see some things that they missed, then you sit down and say, now this is the rubric, this is the score I gave you on the rubric and why, and this is how you could improve on the next paper. And then it's up to you if you give them a second chance, like go back and, now you've got my rubric, go back and let's make adjustments to your paper until you get it up to 100, or you go like, enough is enough and we're going to stop. And maybe I got a B on that paper, maybe I got an 87 or, maybe I got a 92 and like, it's not the end of the world. And you learn from it and go on and write the next paper with those extra skills. So let me tell you, especially for college-bound kids, if they learn how to do the self-discipline of professional writing, of college-level writing while they're in high school, they are way ahead of the game when they get to college. And, I have, one of my sons teaches freshman comp at a university, and the cringe-worthy stories that he tells me about, some kids who were just sent off to college and never learned some basic writing skills. So guess what? They already are struggling with their GPA their first semester. So, give your kids a rock star start. So, brag on my youngest son and his good friend when they started their first semester in college. They were both at the local community college because they were doing budgetary wisdom, so they could do community college pretty inexpensively. And that was good for them. And so their freshman composition teacher at the end of one of the first weeks of class, called them over to her after the class and they go, oh my gosh, what have we done? And she said, where did you two learn to write? Where did you learn to write? Like they were the top writers in the school and neither one of them were going off to be English majors. Like this was not their favorite thing in the world. It's just they had honed their skills during high school using the daggum rubrics. It's just the rubrics in the paper. So, the Seven Sisters, especially our writing guides, we developed those writing guides to kind of ease kids from introductory to advanced to college level, cohesive, good writing so that they can express themselves well in college and non-college bound kids so that they can go forward in life and express their ideas clearly. Because if they can write them, they can write to the president when they need to write to the president or their senators or their state representatives or, the local newspaper, an editorial. Like there are things sometimes we need to make our ideas clear to other people. If we have some strong writing skills, college bound or not, those are really, really powerful things. So, you don't have to use a rubric. You don't have to do it. There's not one right way to homeschool high school. But if you do, your teen will be better prepared for life, whether they're college bound or non-college bound. And it makes grading so much easier because it's not subjective. So it's just like, here's the rules. And again, take any rubric that if you got a Seven Sisters guide or you download one off the internet or use one that we put up on the website, you adjust it to what's important to you. Because it's not one right way to homeschool high school. And you might find that there are other goals that you have for your teen and you just go for it because, this is why we homeschool. All right. Please, 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 if you ever have questions, fire us off a question in the Seven Sisters group or send us something in the inbox and either Sabrina or I can do a Facebook Live and share with everybody. Or maybe sometimes we just throw it into a post, so there's the written concrete information. So either way, your questions matter because you matter and your families matter. And that's why your big sisters are here. So thanks for doing this all together and y'all have a great day.